Hello there, and welcome to episode 49 of the Path to Better A1C podcast. I am your host, Jenny Peña, National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach, Diabetes Prevention Program Lifestyle Coach, founder, CEO of Gen B Coaching, and creator of the A1C Reset Protocol. That is my 12-week one-on-one signature coaching program to help you lower your A1C, prevent diabetes, balance your blood sugar, regain your energy, and curb those cravings. Now, I am super excited about today's episode because obviously nutrition is one of those topics that I am very passionate about. And I think that everybody hyper focuses on it. Now, I'm not saying it in a criticizing voice, but I know that maybe a lot of people think that nutrition it's the only way that they can actually balance their blood sugar. And while it does play a very important role, it is not the only thing. But today we are going to talk about a lot of these different diets, right? We're going to talk about keto, Mediterranean. What is this whole thing? What actually works? What's the science behind it? And hopefully you can make a decision that fits you because I do believe in bio individuality. Now, I am sure that the first thing that you thought when you heard you are pre diabetic, you're a diabetic, or your family member, it's like, I cannot eat sugar, I cannot eat carbs, and all that. And I want to bring clarity on those misconceptions. Now, last week, I got to talk about World Diabetes Day, the risks, the awareness, how important it is just to be aware, right? To monitor, to check your labs, to understand those lab results, right? And have an open conversation with your doctor. But today we're going to shift to clarity and nutrition. Before we talked about awareness and all these things, now we're going to talk about clarity and nutrition. Because once you know your risk, the next question is always going to be what diet actually works? Like, what is one thing that I can do around nutrition that will help me? And before we dig even deeper, please, if you haven't, if you are a pre diabetic, if you have just been diagnosed with diabetes, if you know that you are at higher risk, grab my free pre-diabetes roadmap guide at subscribepage.io/starter guide. It walks you through the lab numbers, how to build balanced meals without the guesswork. It have very simple first steps for you to start getting that balance in your blood sugar, regaining your energy. And it is a guide that I wish I had when I was diagnosed with pre-diabetes. Now, all right. Let's make sense out of keto, low carb, Mediterranean, plant based. I mean, I'm not going to be able to cover all of the diets and all of the different styles, but I'm going to try to hit the most popular ones, or at least the ones that most of my clients come and mention. Now, why there is so much diet confusion? If you have ever Googled, and I am almost sure that you have, best diet for prediabetes, diet to lower A1C, or diet to reverse type 2 diabetes, you already know how overwhelming it is. Keto, paleo, vegan, DASH, Mediterranean, they all have studies, they all have success stories. And here's the truth most plans work for someone. I know it's not what you were expecting me to say, but the key isn't the label, it's more in the balance of the plate. That's why I believe and I advocate for balance because it is way more sustainable long term. Now, that is why I teach my PFF formula. And if you have been listening to me for a while, you should be familiar with it. Is instead of best friend forever, is PFF that stands for protein, fiber, and fat at every meal. If you don't do anything else, the one thing that I would love for you to do is to have protein, fiber, and fat at every meal. It's the foundation for steady blood sugar. It's the foundation for having hunger that is satisfied and for lasting energy. If you are not feeling energy, if you're feeling hungry all the time, I can assure you, if you analyze your plate, you're going to notice that one of those elements is probably missing. It is not balanced. Now, let's go on a quick tour of some popular diets, right? Keto. Keto is like one of those that I am not against it. I feel that a lot of these recipes may be a good point for these individuals that have a specific guideline on carbs, especially if you're a diabetic and you're working with a dietitian or you're working with an endocrinologist. They may actually give you a very specific guideline in terms of carb intake, protein intake, and all of that. That should be with a dietitian or an endocrinologist. And keto does provide a lot of these recipes that are almost like a swap that will still give you the recipes and the meals that you like with a lower carb content. That's pretty much the benefit of keto. Now, here are some pros. Rapid carb cut. There is surely a short term glucose improvement because it is reducing the carb intake drastically. Now, here are some cons. And I have had some clients that they were successful losing weight and balancing. And then the moment that they incorporated a few more carbs, everything started bouncing back. It's very hard to maintain. Tends to raise the LDL levels, right? Like your cholesterol and fat levels in your blood. And it tends to be low in fiber because it hyper focuses on fats and protein. And fiber is actually on a lot of foods that have carbs. Beans are rich in fiber, but they also have carbs. Whole grains, they are carbs, and yet they're one of the main sources of fiber. Yes, you can get fiber from leafy greens, you can get fiber from fruits, you can get fiber from these things, but those are the sources of fiber. So if you take those out, there is not much of a fiber intake. So those are one of the cons. So keto can be a tool, as I said, but I personally feel that long term health needs plants, it needs some complex carbs, and it needs flexibility. So it's a very, very hard to sustain. Now, if you go into the ultra low carb Atkins style, again, you have lower post meal spikes, but then there are other extremes. Again, you may have fatigue because the brain needs carbs. Carbs are that quick source of energy. So when you're cutting that out, um, a lot of shifts need to happen for your body to produce that energy. And then there may be a rebound in cravings. So it's one of those that, again, it was very famous a few years ago, and now you don't hear it much. Um, Again, if you can't see yourself eating this way next year, that's a good way of assessing it's not your plan. I always tell my clients for everything that they eat, I can come up, we troubleshoot, we talk about what are some options for breakfast, what are some options for lunch or dinner. And I always tell them if you cannot see yourself eating this and enjoying it, let's explore something else. But whatever you eat should be things that you enjoy. Now, let's talk about the Mediterranean diet. If there's one diet that has been the most research, really backed up, there's tons of data, is the Mediterranean diet. And what is it about? Mainly fish, clean oils like olive oil and nuts, lots of vegetables, right? It's very good in terms of that. And it's great for heart and metabolic health. So that's why a lot of doctors endorse it. Again, a lot of science behind it. Um, but there could be portion pitfalls if carbs dominate. If you're not able of balancing that and making sure that carbs don't sort of take over your plate, it can be a dangerous thing. So it works best if you are very balanced, right? Olive oil, fish, veggies, complex carbs. Now, the plant based, vegetarian, vegan. I know many, and I have worked with a few clients. Sometimes it's the religious reasons, sometimes it is just for a sense of not hurting the animals. Everybody has a different approach as to why they want to embrace plant based. The pros is that you're going to get lots of fiber, you're going to get lots of antioxidants, and vegetarian diet that helps lowering inflammation. A lot of people, when they're struggling with like high inflammation levels, and there are certain markers with your labs that will actually show that by increasing vegetables, that actually lowers your inflammation. Now, some of the cons is that it does need protein planning. Protein sources from plants can be a challenge for you to hit certain markers. So it can actually be a bit challenging when you're trying to manage glucose and blood sugar spikes, right? So plant-based is fantastic as long as there is protein based and not just carb based. Because I even had a personal friend and she kept saying, I am a vegetarian, but I am the unhealthiest vegetarian ever. Because everything she was eating was fried. A lot of the things that she was incorporating was processed. And that tells you that maybe even if you embrace a certain diet style, it doesn't necessarily assume that you're following a healthy balance. Now, the DASH diet. DASH diet is endorsed by the American Diabetes Association and it's great when you're having blood pressure and you need kidney support. I'm going to call it a challenge. You have to watch sodium and carb pairing quickly on the American Diabetes Association. If you do your research or you ask ChatGPT, they will say that there are 5 evidence based eating patterns that they support for diabetes prevention and diabetes management. They are Mediterranean, DASH, vegetarian or vegan, low carb, and low fat balanced plans. These are the different ones. Now, they are all have to be tailored based on your specific needs. There are some individuals that they may have diabetes or pre-diabetes, but they may have other conditions. If you're having issues with your kidney function, your diet is going to have to change a bit. If you're having fatty liver disease, your diet may need to change. If you're having high levels of cholesterol and the triglycerides, your diet may need to change a little bit. So you see how you may have a style, but there has to be a bit of flexibility so that you can address your individual needs. That's what I love my one-on-one coaching program because I go through what does this person need? What are the fruits, vegetables, protein sources that they enjoy? What is important to them? And that seems to work to find a plan that they don't need to necessarily overhaul their entire diet routine, but they will know how to tweak their diet and their plate using the things that they enjoy. Now, the ADA's takeaway overall is simple, right? Like, yes, they endorse these 5 diets, and it depends on your personal situation. But the gold standard, and that is what I teach, is to balance the balance plate, which is the diabetes plate method. And I'm going to go through it quickly. So it's not like a single magic diet that you can use as an anchor. It's more about the diabetes plate method. It's also known as the balance plate. And what is that? That you look at your plate and half of your plate should be non-starchy vegetables. That should be your goal. Broccoli, leafy greens, peppers, onions, eggplant, cucumbers, Brussels sprouts, green beans, now that Thanksgiving is approaching. Half your plate should be that. Let's think about Thanksgiving in the US. The typical, what would be those green vegetables? Most places, they will have some Brussels sprouts, they will have some green beans. I'm sure that you're going to have some side salad with many different vegetables there. They're all non starchy vegetables. Half your plate should be that. Now, a quarter of your plate should be protein. What are some sources of protein? Chicken, fish, eggs, tofu. Turkey is actually an amazing source of protein. Make sure your plate has that protein in there, that you have that half of the non starchy vegetables and then a quarter protein in there. Then the other quarter of your plate, right? Half a plate, non starchy vegetables, a quarter of a plate, your protein. The other quarter should be smart carbs. I do not advocate to go on an extreme diet unless you're having a specific guideline from your dietitian, from your endocrinologist, that they're really advocating and believe that for your needs, you need to go on an extreme low carb diet. And what are these smart carbs? Beans, quinoa, fruits, sweet potatoes, lots of squashes. All these things are amazing sources of carbs, carbs that have some fiber and high in nutrients. And then you just add a little bit of healthy fat. What is that? Some avocados, handful of nuts, olive oil, avocado oil. All these are great. This is the gold standard for blood sugar balance because, again, it naturally embodies what I was mentioning before: protein, fiber, and fat. If you think about that and frame every single meal like that, you are going to see changes. Guaranteed. You are going to change. Your energy levels are going to go up. You're not going to feel as much cravings. It's going to change. Now, if you already have diabetes, and I mentioned that before, if you already have diabetes, kidney disease, fatty liver disease, there are other complications that can come from blood sugar. Always check with your doctor and your dietitian. They may adjust those goals depending on your labs, depending on your medication. But if you're in the pre-diabetic range or in a very early stage of type 2, this plate method is the best general guideline to start with. It's simple, it's flexible because you can incorporate the things that you actually enjoy, and it is sustainable. Now, how do you put this into practice? I will say, try building one balanced plate each day of the week. Try to build one. Pick breakfast, pick lunch, pick dinner. You don't need maps. You don't need macro math. You don't need to start using all these apps to track your calories. Do it visually. Notice how your energy and cravings change when you do that. And again, if you need some structure, grab my pre-diabetes roadmap guide. I am explaining that in detail. Subscribepage.io/starter guide, or join my 5-day reset, the Sugar Fix Reset, that is self-paced. It's a series of emails with tools, specific steps to follow for 5 specific days. For the entire month of November, I am actually offering it for $19. And then see how those balanced plates fit into your real life meals. And you can do exactly the same thing when you're at a restaurant. Now, next week and the week after, I am going to be on vacation, but you're going to get a treat. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get an episode, but I have 2 amazing guests for the next 2 weeks. Next week, we're going beyond the plate and we're going into mindset. And one topic that I was even very puzzled about, and I'm glad that I got um, this hypnotherapist to come and talk about how hypnotherapy can help you when it comes to habit formation, managing cravings, and finally helping you balance your blood sugar. So, following week, which is actually my birthday on December 5th, I have this amazing gentleman that lost incredible amount of weight, but that's not it. It's more about how has he has been able to sustain it and now how his experience has catapulted him into helping other young men and women to focus on their health, focus on their leadership skills, and pour back into the community, which is amazing. So stay tuned. Don't miss those two amazing episodes. Thank you so much for listening to the Path to Better A1C podcast. If today's episode gave you clarity, please share it with someone. Send me a message. I'm on Instagram. I have my email. All of my information is in the show notes. And if there is any topic that you may want for me to include, please share. I am Coach Jenny, and my goal is to bring awareness and to help everyone that I can fight this battle against diabetes and regain their energy, their focus, and their health, one strategy at a time. Have an amazing weekend. Bye.